The biggest shift is authenticity, making that transition from classroom teacher to school leader. You might think you need to have this certain persona as it relates to leadership. You need to be
Mhm.
this person that always makes sure that people know you're in authority. If you truly have the authority that's going to change communities, you don't have to express that. You just walk in it. Just be authentic. People can clearly see through what's real and what's not. I think if you just tap into your personal story, your personal personality, all of those things, it's really going to unleash your superpower.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, George Valenzuela.
This is education coach George Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it. We're here today with Dr. Donovan Smalls. Donovan is making big moves in the world of educational leadership. He's a former teacher turned powerhouse school leader, mentor, and consultant. He's the guy behind the Impact Framework, helping aspiring school leaders step up, get certified, and thrive in their roles. He's also a big voice in supporting Black educators, serving as chair and executive board member for the New Jersey State affiliate of the National Alliance of Black School Educators. If you're thinking about leadership or you're a school admin looking to level up, this episode is for you. Donovan, how are you?
I'm great, George. I appreciate you for having me.
What made you transition from teaching into leadership? And what was that moment when you knew this is my lane? I got this.
I feel like going into leadership was something that I was called to do. It's not necessarily something that I looked at doing for myself, but just having really strong mentors that saw something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself and the impact that they thought I could make beyond the classroom. That's one of the things that I was drawn to. And I'm truly enjoying leadership, just the impact that I'm able to have with teachers, with students, and also families.
Mentorship is such an important thing. I remember when I was a young district leader, I had mentors, and that helped me a lot in the beginning. But then as I started to level up and I had other aspirations and I had other dreams and I needed those type of mentors, I remember not finding one. Even if I asked certain people, if they said yes, they still wouldn't do it. Then I read a quote by Bill Gates. He said, if you don't have a mentor yet, just read the books of the people that have already accomplished something similar to what you want to accomplish, and let the book be your mentor until you find a mentor. And that's what I did. What advice would you give someone that can't find a mentor in a leadership role?
I think finding those books from authors that are doing something similar to what you want to do, I think that's extremely important. And I also think that just with knowing the technology that we have, you can have a virtual mentor. You can find somebody that is doing the same or something similar and find what they are doing, find the similarities in what you want to do, and just use that. And so you can find somebody, whether that's in person or whether that's virtually, that you can connect with on a daily basis. So I think just using all of your resources, whether it's books, whether it's YouTube, people on Instagram, you can find people who are doing great work. And once you do that, I think just gleaning from them is going to help you tremendously.
Your impact framework, break it down for us. And what makes it a game changer for aspiring school leaders?
My framework is really a 4-part framework, and I focus on helping aspiring school leaders land their first leadership role, navigate complex dynamics, enhance communication skills, and drive instructional excellence. And as an aspiring school leader looking to make that transition, I think it's important to be able to land that role. Like, what goes into it? It's not just, let me submit my resume. It's also, what am I currently doing as a teacher to prepare myself for that role? We talk about the complexities of school leadership, those interpersonal and organizational complexities. How am I handling tough conversations? All of that is extremely important. We talk about enhancing our communication skills. We know that communication is everything. And I teach that you should probably focus on over communicating as opposed to under communicating. And so all of that is critical. And then lastly, we come to driving instructional excellence. How are we helping our students get from where they are to where they want to be?
I love the concept of over communicating rather than under communicating. I actually used it on my son because I realized at times I would communicate when things go wrong instead of communicating all the time. And even if I'm going overboard, at least what I'm saying is on his mind. Is that what you're trying to say?
Basically what you said, how leadership as it relates to school leadership also relates to parenting, right? It also relates to just different aspects of life. We're not just communicating when something goes wrong. We're not just communicating with teachers when we want to change something within our school system, within our school culture. We're also acknowledging what they do well. I believe when you acknowledge what people do well, that's a better motivator for change than constantly looking at areas where they need to improve, right? I think that it's important to make sure that there are areas that we are improving in, but how are we focusing more on what they're doing well and their strengths as a motivator to get to where we want everybody to be?
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the like button, and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning. And now for a word from one of our sponsors.
Education is changing. Classrooms look different, and the future demands that our students be equipped for whatever comes their way. Educators play a huge role in helping prepare students for their futures. Defined Learning is a K-12 standards-aligned PBL solution that provides high-quality cross-curricular performance tasks across content areas such as ELA, math, science, social studies, computer science, and more. The hands-on projects are based on real-world situations and allow students to apply their learning. Education is changing. Give students the tools and experiences to recognize their futures and make an incredible impact on the world. Defined, the authority on applied learning.
We had the pleasure of listening to George this morning on project-based learning, and he shared his story that his aunt encouraged him to go into education. And she was absolutely right. He is so talented at sharing information in a way that is easy to digest and is inspiring to go back and actually implement and make change.
So my takeaway is that Mr. Valenzuela was very inspiring. He was very motivational and helped me to think about a new way of getting my teachers excited.
When I set out to do a workshop, my key deliverable is energy. And this momentum is used to make connections, inspire, educate, and ultimately transform the audience so that they're compelled to take that same energy back to their schools and communities. And although we have fun, we tackle the hard topics of today, like educational policy, pedagogy for improving curriculum and instruction, and empowering today's students by connecting our work to the needs of the workforce. So please consider Lifelong Learning Defined for your next keynote, workshop, or conference, and overall instructional and educational coaching needs. My name is George, and I hope to connect with you soon.
We would love to have him come and do some work with us and help us be a little more successful and help our students to be more successful.
I move around a lot of schools, and we're seeing a huge disconnect. A lot of teachers that have come from non-traditional pathways, especially in the past few years. And so just interactions, expectations is really the first step. All of my teachers, raise your right hand, and please repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my students. All of my administrators, all my directors, all my principals, all my coordinators, raise your hands, please, your right hand, and repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my faculty and staff. Thank you. Donovan, what's the biggest challenge new school leaders run into that they didn't see coming? And what's your go-to advice for handling it?
The biggest challenge is once you step into that leadership role, you are now a decision maker and a problem solver. As a classroom teacher, yes, you are responsible for solving issues in your specific classroom, but let's say something is a little beyond your scope, right? You can always refer to an administrator, but now you are the administrator, and it's important that you now figure out a solution. That doesn't mean you need to figure everything out on your own, but it does mean if you have a team of individuals, how are you bringing that issue back to the team, figuring it out together, and then bringing that solution to the teachers? That's the biggest thing. It's you are a problem solver, you are a decision maker, and it's important that you figure out solutions and not just lip service for your teachers.
So what I'm hearing is once you're the school leader, you're responsible for everything, including team collaboration, problem solving, level setting, all the things that a school leader needs to do. You're responsible. Got it.
Absolutely. For better or for worse. Hopefully for better.
School leadership is all about communication. What's one shift leaders can make right now to level up how they connect with teachers, students, and parents?
The biggest shift is authenticity, making that transition from classroom teacher to school leader. You might think you need to have this certain persona as it relates to leadership. You need to be this person that always makes sure that people know you're in authority. If you truly have the authority that's going to change communities, you don't have to express that. You just walk in it. Just be authentic. People can clearly see through what's real and what's not. I think if you just tap into your personal story, your personal personality, all of those things, it's really going to unleash your superpower.
One of the things I try to do in connecting with people is after learning about what challenges are, I think about my own journey. Did I have a similar challenge? And if I did, I lead with my conversion story where I tell them about the problem. They do relate to it. So they're like, okay, all right, good. Then I tell them how I overcame it. I have found that is more useful in helping me connect with people in opposed to showing up and saying, hey, I'm Dr. Valenzuela and I'm here to teach you something.
That makes a lot of sense. That speaks to the authenticity that you have and just something that I also try to exude myself. I try to be as transparent as possible because, as you mentioned, it's the story that people connect with, and then you can teach the principles after that. That's an extremely powerful strategy as it relates to connecting with people and then getting them to shift mindsets and shift their practices.
And now for a word from one of our sponsors. If you're a STEM and PBL teacher like me, you're always on the lookout for new project ideas and resources. You know George does PBL, and I'm telling you, look no further than SmartLab. SmartLab really has a fresh take on STEM and PBL. I'm proud to be a partner, and they sponsor the podcast. But just don't take my word for it. Check out what other educators are saying about SmartLab.
When students enter into SmartLab, they are allowed to think outside of traditional norms.
It gives them a lot of agency. They feel empowered and important. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the SmartLab environment and the way the project process is set up.
SmartLab becomes this place where they can do those things and have the time and space to communicate better and even deal with social emotional stuff. They're having a bad day. A SmartLab's a place where we can change the pace of what they're learning to match their mental needs for the day. And that comes back tenfold later on when they want to be there and they want to learn and they want to do stuff and they feel safe and they feel like they can get the things they need.
That's one of the big benefits of being in more of a collaborative environment is it makes you have to work. It makes you have to be accountable.
Please look in this episode's show notes for a link to connect with SmartLab. Donovan, you talk a lot about instructional excellence. What's one strategy in your experience moves the needle the most in schools?
In my experience, specifically when it comes to aspiring leaders, once you first get into the role, it's to develop those relationships first. I know instructional leadership is something that is preached to aspiring leaders, but I think there needs to be better instruction as it relates to the approach. Week one, we're not going right into the classroom to observe and to give feedback as it relates to constructive criticism. We are developing the relationships first. We're developing that relational equities that when it's time to provide some constructive criticism that can improve teaching and learning, we're able to do that in a smooth way. And the teachers know that you respect them and that we're actually here to collaboratively improve student achievements. It's that authenticity. It's that taking your time, reading the room. It's all of those things collectively that I think helps drive that instructional excellence.
It's all about collaboration. One of the things that I've learned recently, you don't hit the ground running, you hit the ground listening, especially if you're new somewhere. There's a culture, there's a climate that's already established. If you weren't there when it was being developed, then you can't own it. I like to observe, check it out, and then see how I can make an impact. And sometimes you can't.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the things I had to learn my first year as a vice principal. I remember we were planning during the summer, getting everything together for the school year. I have all of these ideas that I'm bringing to the table. And then a veteran vice principal that I worked alongside, he said, okay, you have some great ideas. Let's see what the environment is like. Let's give it about a month or two to really see if we can implement what it is that you would like to do. That really just taught me exactly what you're talking about. Read the room first before you try to create change. Yeah, that's powerful.
Donovan, you're big on supporting Black school leaders. What impact do you see organizations like your own, the National Alliance of Black School Educators, having? And what still needs to change?
I think the impact goes beyond just Black educators. The research talks about when you have individuals who don't necessarily look like the main population of student makeup or the community makeup, it benefits everyone because we're breaking stereotypes. We are talking about different perspectives. We're being culturally responsive. I think it's extremely important to have organizations that are going to highlight minority groups, right? And that's not to say that we are prioritizing one group over another, but it is to say we are honoring the perspectives of all people. That's important. That's what I believe this country is built on in terms of its greatness, right? It's the perspective of everyone. As we continue to uplift Black educators, preparing them for leadership roles, I think that everyone wins, everyone benefits. Looking back at my own school leadership journey, I don't necessarily remember having any Black school leaders. What type of impact would that have made on someone like me who didn't necessarily see myself getting into education until later on? What if I saw somebody like that? What type of impact would I have been able to make on the earlier side of my career if that's something that I saw? It's just important to highlight the experiences of everyone.
For my audience, I think what Donovan is talking about is educational fairness. All right, Donovan, let's put this out in the universe. How can people contact you so you can speak at their school, at their conference, or their event?
You can visit my website at donovansmalls2.com. And then I'm also on all social media platforms at donovansmalls2. And then I have a YouTube channel called Beyond the Classroom, which is also on YouTube.
That's it for this episode. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast. Whether you're a teacher or administrator, you lead by walking alongside your students and your staff. You teach them what to do, you model for them. Let's say you're in a situation where you don't know what to do and you bring in a coach or a resource, you learn alongside them. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the second thing is this. Give your people feedback, not pushback. Whoever you push back on, whether physically or verbally, they're going to do it right back immediately. And if they're intimidated by our position, our status, they're going to do it behind our backs and ruin our programs. My guy. I want to leave you on this note. Trajectories can be changed. When I was in 10th grade, here's a snapshot of who I was in 10th grade. There's a rapper named Rakim. I'm not sure if you guys know about Rakim, but he used to say, it's not where you're from, it's where you at. And I played that on my headphones at 16 years old every day until I believed it. And I'm showing you this because I'm seeing versions of this throughout American schools. This is your reality of what you have to face. If I can do it, any kid can do it, but they have to work hard. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with George Valenzuela.